month, are you going to host this over in your fancy new conference room?
We could definitely do that.
Put it on the agenda on the big screen?
Mhm.
Think we're ready?
Sure.
All right, we'll call the land use.
We're ready.
Okay, we'll call the land use committee meeting to order. Wednesday, July 19th at 7:30 a.m. First item on the agenda is fireworks code revision.
So, I was expecting Brad here, but I know he had other plans early this morning. He was gonna try and make it. So items 1 and 2 are pretty much together in the aspect of that the clerk's office / finance department typically process the fireworks permits and the carnival permits. And in speaking with Brad this year, the carnival that was at the South Kitsap Mall, I know they don't call it the South Kitsap Mall anymore, but over there, they were having some compliance issues, inspection issues, and so he felt that it should be part of a permitting system. So I spoke to Ellen briefly, and she, you know, she was indifferent as to whether it fall into the DCD permitting system or not. So I spoke to Brad. Brad wishes it to be part of that process. So that's what this is to say, you know, do we want to...
Why can't they have a permit versus us?
Who?
If they're the fire department.
Because it's in our code. So, I mean, the finance department and the clerk's office can push these permits through. The problem is our code just says, hey, you're gonna drop it off at the clerk's office, and we're gonna, I don't even think it says that we collect comments from other departments. It just says you drop it off, and then we hand it, all the originals, back to the fire department. Fire department has full authority, and that's it. So whatever the fire department says, within reason, within their code, goes. So it's my understanding that we're having some issues with, not issues, but there's other regulations that need to be followed when you're having a carnival or fireworks, meaning that there's tents, there's other inspections.
The
So
fireworks, I know,
no
we
tents.
got a legal opinion on. We can't do anything beyond what we're currently doing.
And that's, we're not talking
Fireworks,
stands, not the.
Display.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about, the stands, right? Yeah, where we had something in there and we went back and removed it because we can't charge anything beyond what is expressly defined in the RCW.
Correct, and it's my understanding that, that even though the charges are indifferent, from what I understand, the main concern is that when because there isn't a permit that they get, and if it is, it's a Word document that the clerks creates and says, hey, you have a certificate, and Brad's concern is them actually signing terms and conditions, like a normal permit, that, hey, if you have a tent that's bigger than XYZ, you need to do this permit. If you have blah, blah, blah. If you have, for cooking, they have to have inspection. If they have, and I'm sorry, I wish Brad was here, he can explain the details.
Well, so maybe we need to continue this to next month's
Sounds like it.
meeting so that Brad can come and propose what he wants. And it'd be helpful if he brought some draft language too.
What were the compliance issues?
Trying to think, for the carnival, they were having, they didn't have it clear as to if they were gonna be sleeping on campus or not, or the, parking lot. So they were gonna have campers set up there, and it's my understanding you can't, it's more of a health district issue, not a city issue. And I know Doug was working with Brad and the health district on that. In the past, they were dumping some sort of, I don't know if it was food debris or whatever, into the stream that was, that runs behind that area. I know that they didn't do it this year, but that was one of the concerns. And then I know then they have to have an inspection before they start, because they have to make sure that
That's an LNI
all the wires
inspection.
and all this stuff are put away and tucked, so there's no trip hazards. And I know that there were some concerns there, but they tightened it up. Once Brad shows up and they tell him, hey, you have to do X, Y, Z, they tighten it up. But, and I don't know, going through a permitting system is going to alleviate that, but, so I bring it here. So if it goes through the DCD permit system, there's going to be some changes to the code, so that's why it's here, to say, hey, if you want to go through this path, we would provide some code language. So it sounds like we'll continue this, have Brad work on it, and bring it back.
Okay, so items 1 and 2 are being continued until next month.
I don't know what you guys think, but I think draft language
Yeah.
for what the fire district wants and what their concerns are would be real
I
helpful.
think having Brad here as well.
Yeah, I think, well, and you could either list the conditions as part of a code language, or it could just be conditions that are on the face of a permit that get initialed as,
The other thing is, so we want the carnival that happens at the town center mall, it comes through us because they're typically late and we need insurance or whatever. But we still want some control of what happens on the waterfront if there's a carnival there. To me, there's like, do we want carnivals just everywhere in town?
And the code right now just says, hey, if you want to have a carnival, you have to seek county council permission. That's it.
Yeah. So we would still know, okay?
I know that they're inspected by LNI, not just the fire
Department,
district,
yeah.
before they can start operation. The one on
Yeah.
the town square mall is on private property.
Right.
I mean, we've got to, if they're using our property, then
We have
a permit process
access
for
to
that.
that,
So
right.
beyond LNI and fire, I mean, it sounds like the health district has challenges, but I think Nick's onto something here. I don't know that it's our code. It's an application, and the health district signed off on it, and maybe there's some more language to our code, but I'm not sure this is really our battle. I mean,
Okay.
with health and safety of our citizens, I guess we want to be concerned about that, but I'm still not convinced what it is they're wanting us to do. And it sounds like it's the fire district's concern, and so maybe, Nick, does it need to be in our code or not, you think?
I'm not sure. I think it really depends on the language in state law and whether that authority already exists and we're just enforcing something, or whether we need to create a rule to enforce. So as long as those standards are in place, I think we can put those as conditions on a permit that we issue.
And I think that's the other issue, is there isn't a permit that's being issued through the permitting system, and that's what the other catch is, that he wants it as part of the permitting system. And I'm not familiar with the system, so I don't know if it's just as easy as adding a permit or if it's more all-inclusive, I don't know.
All right, you want to move on to item 3? View Protection Overlay District and tree maintenance.
Right. So we received a complaint a number of months ago where an individual was asking us to enforce some language in our view protection area that requires people to maintain vegetation on their property when it blocks the view of another property. And so this is another example of our code where it's having the city insert itself into civil disagreements, and we sought a legal opinion on whether this provision was enforceable, and also what happens, if the tree was already planted when the ordinance took effect, does it have a right to be there, or does it have to be removed, and sort of what was the intent of council? And so we provided some analysis from the attorney. My position on this would be that this one section, which was previously 162707, it's now been moved in the new code, probably ought to be repealed. I think it's really difficult to enforce. It's difficult for the city to determine what a view is or isn't, and when and how much something should be trimmed in order to protect an individual view. There was recently a story on NPR about buying view easements in Seattle, and people are buying view easements for like $500,000 in order to preserve their view. And that is a very easy private party to private party type of agreement that can be put into place if somebody wants to preserve a view. But when you put the city into a position of sort of trying to determine what view exists or doesn't exist, it's a very difficult thing for us to enforce. But we're open to suggestion if the council wants us to to try to get involved in this, we can, but it's at some risk, I think, to the city.
And so if we were to pull it out, there's no sort of vesting issue related to view shed maintenance?
Yeah, that was Sharon's point, was this guy who's complaining. She said even if you repeal it, if somebody had planted trees that were going to grow that big or were already that big, we would still have to enforce that.
Even if we repealed it?
Correct. Because somebody did something wrong that was not legal at the time this code was in effect. So that's at the end of the first page.
Yeah, but I think proving that is, proving when something was planted, I think that's going to be a difficult thing to do, unless you have documentation of that. And there's a chance we could be forced to enforce something retroactively, but
This is an active situation in my neighborhood. I have a full view. I sit on the west side of the street and have a full panoramic view. I have a couple of trees. I have a dogwood tree, and then I have this other tree. I don't know what it is, but it's been there for a long time. I mean, and it's huge. And it's deciduous, so in the winter you can see more through it. And then in front of my house I have a hedge, and down below I had a lilac tree and a maple tree, and a person bought across the street from me 2 or 3 years ago, and she came over and wanted me to lower my hedge and cut my lilac tree and get rid of my other trees because it was blocking her view. Now that tree has been there for, I don't know, 100 years, 150 years. I can't get my arms around it, okay? And so I lowered my hedge, so now she has a nice view of my roof. Because her house looks straight out at my roof, the only view she has is to the sides. But then my neighbor to the north, that home used to be immaculately kept. It was park-like. The people that owned it it was just wonderful. They sold several years ago, and now it's a rental. And since they sold it, there's been no lawn maintenance or yard maintenance at all. So there's holly trees, there's fir trees, it's just really, really overgrown. And that really disturbs, again, the lady who purchased just a couple years behind us. So I've often wondered, what is her right to that view? What is her right to that view?
I think it's a civil matter myself.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be, I think it's, personal opinion is, be a good neighbor and work with your neighbor.
Right.
So everybody in the neighborhood's happy, but it's your property and your tree.
Well,
I've got a gigantic cedar tree that blocks most of my view down in the hole. It's not on my property, and my wife complains about it all the time. It's not our tree.
the other issue that you potentially have here is that a lot of the areas where views exist are steep slopes, and so
Right.
you're supposed to get geotechnical reports before you start removing vegetation or altering vegetation on a slope, and so this is forcing people to remove trees, which the removal of that tree could require an expensive geological report rather than just,
Chainsaw.
yeah. So it's, I think the city got themselves into something
Mhm.
when they created this rule where.
I think this is bigger than this committee, though. I think.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it probably needs to go to work study.
So I've wrestled with this issue too, and have had to work on complaints. And it's as an example, when people talk about their view, if you sit back there and look out there, your view is different than if you walk up to the window and look out. And so you've got two different kinds of view sheds that you could be arguing about.
Mhm.
And then, how do you calculate an unreasonable blockage? What sort of percentage do you assign it at? And how do you assign that?
Mhm.
It's really difficult.
So what's the
And
county code have in it?
we pulled out. We pulled away from it.
Imagine that.
Yeah, because it was just too difficult to enforce.
The other thing I said to my neighbor, because she wanted this big, beautiful, beautiful tree to come down, And I told her, I said, you don't look up, you look out. Perhaps I can limit, and open that up. But she doesn't realize there are trees on my neighbor's property that are bigger and disturbing her view more than this tree is. So anyway, I want you to know I did trim the hedge and I did cut back the lilac and.
Did you clean your roof though, so she looks at a nice clean roof?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Fortunately, that's not in code.
yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing I think is, we don't require landscape plans when somebody builds a single-family residence, and we don't want to, but, are we gonna get into a situation where the city is saying, well, you can only plant certain species, and you need to show us a plan of how you're gonna do your landscaping to
How
ensure
frequently
that,
are you gonna prune them?
how tall is this species supposed to get? We don't wanna get involved in that,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, heck, in McCormick, you have to tell them what color you're gonna paint. They don't even talk to police this stuff.
Yeah, I think, we're revamping some zoning regulations and coming up with some proposals, and I think limiting building heights is very easy to do, but limiting, getting into vegetation is a nightmare.
With respect to Mr. Sweeney's questions, though, about, so somebody has planted something since this code went into effect, Sharon says we can't repeal it retroactively,
Mm-hmm.
what to tell him?
Well, he doesn't need to know our legal opinion.
No, but I was asked to respond to him after this meeting, at least tell him where it's going from here.
I'm wondering, which property is Mr. Sweeney worried about?
His neighbor to the side, I believe.
I know, I'm trying to figure out which house is Sweeney's.
It's on Perry. He's got the driveway that goes down like this. He's got a nice view. It's the house to the west of him, I'm pretty sure, because his view's that direct, here and here,
Mhm.
and in his living room.
Yeah, I
should
think
look at his
we
address.
certainly could, we could send a letter to the neighbors saying, hey, you've recently planted trees that have the potential to block a view, and this is what our code currently says.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go so far as to say, we're gonna threaten civil action or something,
Yeah.
but we
No,
can
I guess yeah, that's not a bad plan, to notify him of the code, and hopefully they take the right action.
Mhm.
Can I turn this?
Can we go into an executive session? Okay, we're back in session.
I don't recall. If he's on the water side, there's not a house in front of
No,
him.
it's to
To the west.
They're planting between the houses. I don't know what
So
they're.
it's Mountain View or
Okay.
something?
No, it's this view.
Yeah, it's this down here. Yeah, the mountains.
Okay.
And back towards town.
Okay, okay.
But I think regardless of what the view is,
Right.
I think I think Nick's on to something, send him the neighbor a letter and
We'll just let them know what the code says, and
yeah.
We'll leave it at that for now, and I think do we want to take this issue to a full work study meeting?
September,
Uh-huh.
Okay.
yeah. Is our next week's day.
Should we draft some language either to repeal something that would be a discussion item, or do we want to not go that far yet and just bring it as an issue?
I think we should draft some language.
Okay.
I think we're ready for that.
I agree. What do you think, Beck?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Anything else on the view protection? All right. Time limits for handicap parking.
So this is something that came to light here as we moving Nick's operation across the street here. And it happens out there, but in particular it's happening on Prospect Street over here, where people have residential parking permits, and they're vehicles that never move. So they've got a handicap placard. They park in the handicap stall, and that car doesn't move in a month. And I don't think that's the intent of a handicap stall. We have so many, in the city, and they need to be available to folks that are handicapped. So the chief researched this for me, and he said we can put restrictions on it. As you can see, we could require that they are moved every 4 hours. And I don't know that we have to do it on all of our handicap stalls, but I think there's some downtown in particular where we should, to ensure that those stalls are turning over and aren't being used as a place to store derelict vehicles. And that was really what was happening. The big box van, I don't know if you ever saw that there. It was on Prospect, and I
Well-
think we've finally gotten rid of it, but,
We moved it because that's where we put the loading
Right.
zone.
oh, okay, so it's just moved. Anyway, there's that vehicle, there's one other that just, they don't move. They can sit for up to a month in a handicap stall. So as long as we sign it properly, we learned from Bremerton, we can't have custom signs. They have to meet certain, the state statutes. But I would recommend that we in certain instances put time requirements on the 4-hour maximum on those handicap stalls.
Are we gonna have any criteria as to which stalls? I can see the stall, the handicapped parking area in front of our new permit office, because we need that to be able to turn.
I think as needed, we get a complaint or parking enforcement observes that we have vehicles that stalls aren't rotating, then let's put them in. I'm not suggesting that we blanket the city with this
Yeah.
everywhere. This is just use it as a tool to, where it's a problem, is what I would recommend.
Okay.
Seems easy.
Who's in charge of bringing that one forward? Is that Mark?
I'll ask the chief or
Or
Mark.
please, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
or Sharon or somebody.
And you have one more item?
And then we have one more item. Are we adding this to the agenda?
Yes.
One way, okay.
Oh,
One way head-in parking on Sroof?
yeah.
Sroof Street? And this was addressed to Mark.
Yeah, I haven't been involved in this at all, so I don't have a copy of it.
The Little League,
It's under that.
we've allowed this a couple of times in a year for the Little League folks when they have their big tournaments, because they have insufficient parking. I'm not sure how the neighbors in that neighborhood would feel about turning their residential street into a one-way street. I know Little League would like it. So I'll leave it at that.
Are those neighbors impacted by sporting events when people from the sporting event are parking in front of their houses?
Yeah.
So it potentially provides them some parking relief.
I have pretty strong feelings on it.
Yeah, I don't know.
We've had state tournaments up there, we've done a lot of things up there, and I don't remember ever making it one way. We have allowed and have had angled parking going.
You're right. We've never made it one way.
But it's
Oh.
always been two-way, but we've allowed angle parking. I have become more conscious of the use of the Gibbons Fields, that we just renewed that 5-year lease, and it's with disappointment that I've seen the actual level of activity at those fields. The larger field only has 2 teams that play on it. The high school plays there, but Little League only has 2 teams that play there. That complex is being drastically underutilized. And I can't imagine asking the neighbors to make this a one-way street for a tournament they hold every other year or something like that. Doing it for the week or the 2 weeks of the tournament, allowing angled parking, I think is more than acceptable. But to make it a one-way street seems onerous on the rest of the traveling people.
I don't disagree, and if we were to consider this, I think there needs to be a lot more outreach than's been done to the neighbors. I think I'd be upset if I had to circle the block to get to my house.
Yeah.
Use the streets, now one way. Or circle the block to leave my house. If I lived at one end of the one-way street and now I couldn't go the other direction now.
Yeah, then you're potentially also looking at cars backing up trying to get out onto Sydney because everybody's being funneled to one point rather than 2 points.
And it sits right there at the Gibbons Center, and there's quite a bit of traffic on the Gibbons Center.
So we're gonna ask for, well, what do you wanna do? Do we wanna ask for,
I think say that you're open to England parking for events and think
Okay.
of that, or do you want to?
Yeah, I don't think the issue's big enough to take such drastic action. You know, we understand the concerns, and let's work on those for the week you have your tournament.
Right.
What if utilization of the field changed?
And I think that's a whole different
That,
scenario.
it's a different, yeah.
You know, that's what we're here for, right? Things change.
Yeah.
And we adapt to those changes.
Even if it wasn't just their tournaments, they don't use those fields at all in the wintertime.
Right.
I mean, this is a. you
That's a
know,
good point.
3 months of the year, there's baseball going on those fields.
Yeah.
The other 9 months of the year, they're not being they're being underutilized, and we're gonna make a change that's year round to accommodate a need that's maybe 3 months, and definitely they have an intense need for a few weeks,
Right.
you know, for a tournament.
It's a grass field in the Pacific Northwest.
Right. It's a wetland for 9 months.
It's a grass field in a depressed area, so it is a wetland.
so do you wanna have Mark get hold of him?
Yeah, communicate that there isn't any desire. That's us, the committee didn't see the need.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could impress upon him that even if we were to ask for neighbor input, it probably would be pretty strongly opposed.
I think so.
What other
And that
steps
would
we
be a
can
big
take to
driver.
fulfill his concerns without,
I think we when they have an intense need, we accommodate
there
them.
you go.
Yeah. And we've been doing that since the mid-50s, you know.
Yeah, I don't know if the police have like a standard plan for how to implement that, or Public Works, but
Yeah.
if we have a standard procedure, we can make it easier to do that potentially.
Right.
That angle in parking though, because we were exploring it here on Prospect Street, that to do it permanently, he needs a one-way street because he
Right.
doesn't have.
Mhm.
You put those cars in there this way, now there isn't enough. That's the fire truck test, and they can't get the fire truck through.
And then just for everyone else's information, I got an email from him a few weeks after we had gone to the opening day at Little League, and Little League wanted to buy the entire complex from us, but they didn't have any money. And what kind of arrangements could we make? And I suggested to him at the time that that complex had significant value to the citizens of Port Orchard, and that, you know,
It'd be a great park.
yeah, that it had significant value, and that we would have to make sure that the citizens were adequately and generously compensated for the value of that. And I haven't heard back from him. Actually, I did, and the comment was he would continue to have to figure out how to work with the football folks. So his intent was to eliminate, to own it and eliminate the Pee Wee football from being there.
program, yeah.
But they've got no money.
But they've got no money. That was when I looked into how much usage the fields were actually having, and that's when I became painfully aware how underutilized they were.
All right.
Just one little sidebar, there's a nice article today in the Kitsap Sun about the McCormick Village Park. Chris came and interviewed me, and I must have talked to one of the two of you, because she
I gave her some
got,
numbers.
she had more details than I had off the top of my head, so that did make me aware again that we're counting on about $250,000 in impact fees, park impact fees, to get to that almost $1 million number. And in the construction environment we're in, I'm willing to bet that our bid isn't going to be super favorable. Won't be surprised if it comes in at $1.2 million or so. So we'll have to get creative. I think the desire, and that's what I communicated, is to build it right and add all the amenities into it. So we might have to lean on REIT a little bit to fill that gap, and I'd like to even check with Alan, whether REIT could lend the money. I hate to spend all of our REIT, but
Yeah.
can REIT
Advance the
build
impact
it,
fee money and
then
get paid
the
back.
impact fee money comes back in and we pay REIT back. I'm not sure how, but I think we're gonna come up, $300,000 to $500,000 short. It was we knew when going into the budget we were $250 short. We've got housing starts going there, but we haven't had tons of housing. We thought we were gonna get 100 or so, and there's that many pre-sales out there, but they haven't pulled permits yet. So it's coming. It's just not there. And between now and when we award this contract in the first year, maybe we'll have more of it. But it just refreshed my memory when I read the article. Oh yeah, that's right. We were short. So we'll get there.
All right,
Thank you.
meeting is adjourned at 8:05.